Are you under increasing pressure to ship code faster than ever before? Then it's time to work smarter with Raygun's modern approach to error and performance monitoring. Raygun gives you instant visibility into the health of your software. And what makes it so unique is that it not only tells you when something's gone wrong, it shows you exactly where it's gone wrong and how to fix it, right down to the line of code. Made by developers for developers, Raygun has built a suite of monitoring tools that are used and loved by thousands of software teams every day. You can monitor every corner of your tech stack with widespread language support and native integrations with GitHub, Jira, Slack, Bitbucket, Octopus Deploy, and more for even greater visibility. Visit raygun.com to resolve issues faster and to deliver flawless digital experiences for your users. That's raygun.com to get started on your free 14-day trial with plans starting from as little as $4 a month. raygun.com. Hi, I'm Scott Hanselman. This is another episode of Hansel Minutes. Today I'm talking with Amal Hussein. She's Principal Software Engineer at Indigo. How are you?
I'm amazing. I'm so happy we could finally make this happen. We've been talking about this for a while and not doing anything about it. So I'm glad we finally did something about this needing to record a podcast together problem,
It's good because when you know that you talk to people and you're like, oh, we should have recorded this. Like you have good conversations, whether they be text or DMs or whether they're phone calls. And it's like, oh man, that was a great hour-long phone call. We should have just recorded it and called it, Engineering with Mel and Scott. But we failed to record those. We will in fact record this.
Yeah. I have no doubt that this will be as awesome as all the other conversations we've had in the past. So,
all right. So, we haven't been able to hook up and talk about this stuff because you've been working and being awesome. And this is the thing about awesome people that I have on the podcast is getting on their schedule is hard because of the work that they're doing. And you are working at Indigo right now as a principal software engineer. Let me know what Indigo does, and then we'll back up and talk about your journey.
Yeah, that's a great start. So Indigo is kind of like saving the planet. That's like really what we're doing.
Is that all?
To put it humbly, yes, and mildly, but no, it's we're basically an agriculture technology company, unicorn startup, which is also very cool. We're kind of in the pre-IPO phases right now, just to give you a sense of kind of where we're at as a company. Mm-hmm. But we're essentially trying to kind of decommoditize agriculture and really digitize and help enlift the entire industry with the goal of kind of saving farmers and everyone involved in the ag process, time, money, resources, and having that translate into saving millions of gallons of fuel and water, for the planet, and how helping fight climate change. Essentially, we're kind of we're really like six companies in one company. It's kind of insane. And the part of the company that I work on specifically is Uber for agriculture. So we handle all the logistics. So we have a world-class kind of grain marketplace. It's very kind of like one of a kind, where we connect growers and buyers who are kind of looking to buy agricultural commodities. And by kind of having this model, growers leverage new relationships. They're able to connect with people from all over the world who want to buy their stuff. And, versus having to rely on traditional relationships. McKinsey did a study recently where they put agriculture as like one level above hunting in terms of like how digitized the industry is. And if you think about it, like agriculture is huge. It's like how, why you have food in your fridge and like stuff in your pantry. And, it's a highly efficient system in many ways. Just, think about how, even during the pandemic, like people were still eating food, they weren't eating bread, maybe, as much, right? With all the bakers, all the bakers kind of buying up that flour. But essentially it's a age-old industry, super efficient in its own way, but highly like its efficiency is kind of like hasn't even been tapped, right? Like we don't even know what the potential could be for improving kind of the efficiency of the entire system, because, farmers are relying on emails and faxes and phone calls, and, there's just so much manual work. And so we're really creating tools to help folks in that industry. And we also have a carbon sequestration program. We have like world's largest kind of BI and forecasting on futures, analysis for, agriculture commodities. We've got like satellite images and drones and, kind of looking at all the parts of the world and, looking at, carbon usage. And so there's just many parts of the company. And the part that I work on is the logistics piece. So,
So let me see if I can paraphrase some of this so I can understand, because I think that the example, the kind of Uber for blank, is a thing that is said a lot. And I think what's significant about we'll just use Uber not as the proper noun as a company, but the idea of, using the power of software and algorithms and, thought, providing a layer of abstraction on top of an existing system by which you make that system not 1x, 10x, 100x more efficient. Another example I think of is the difference between something like Craigslist, where people try to buy stuff from people, and which is pretty organized, but didn't take over the world, and something like Facebook Marketplace that is so incredibly simple of like, it's taken the barter system and digitized it. So you're doing that for the way I get my Honeycrisp apples all year round, and you're making that good for me and good for the farmers.
Yeah, and we're building really, and Uber for agriculture is like a really simple, it's a very simple nugget, but it's kind of like an iceberg because there's a lot of actually, kind of complexity under the hood to enable a process like that. We're building algorithms for trip management and calculating kind of efficient fuel routes, to save our carriers and growers money on fuel costs, and also the planet on fuel consumption, right? And, figuring out what the backhauls need to be, so you're going one place, okay, well, how can we get you a route back efficiently, so that it's financially sustainable for you, but also kind of efficient in terms of your resource consumption. We're enabling kind of an open marketplace for freight tendering, for folks to be able to connect and bid on, hey, I need this ship, this is what I'm willing to pay, all right, cool, here's my rates, do they match automatically? Great. If not, it's a wonderfully complex system that enables this kind of this orchestration.
It sounds like but again, my superpower is overly simplistic analogies. It sounds like the traveling salesman problem with an additional 100 variables that affect how these things move around the world. All those different factors need to be weighted and appropriate, as well as game theory, which makes sure that everyone is winning on as many sides as possible.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And it's very cyclical, harvest is Mama Nature has real cycles, and and there's real repercussions for farmers not moving grain fast enough, or and so as soon as you pick something off a tree or take it out of the ground, time is ticking, right? So you need to move things fast, and so enabling that process to be more efficient is huge. And I mean, we're basically taking what used to be phone calls or just lots of complex tasks and kind of reducing it down to just clicks on a screen. So, just here, I want this moved, pick it up this time, this day, and, we make the rest happen. And we partner with carrier networks, all over the country to help enable that. So we're not necessarily hiring truck drivers, which are really America's heroes. We don't talk about that whole industry enough, but we work through carrier networks. So there's existing companies that are trusted partners that we collaborate with to help make that happen. So we've got mobile apps, web apps, the whole shebang.
Okay. Taking a step back for a second, as we've kind of explained to people the breadth and the weight of the cool work that you're doing and that folks at Indigo are doing, how does one even build a resume to be able to do kind of stuff like that? I would be overwhelmed just thinking about the algorithmic complexity of potentially what needs to be worked on, not just the individual silos within the group and the different divisions and all that kind of stuff, but like, how do you even get started? I'm still learning JavaScript, and I've been doing that since its inception. Maybe you could talk to me about your journey and how you would work your way up to principal engineer, climbing that ladder.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, to be honest, I think Indigo is a very unique company because, we're kind of one of a kind in the space that we're in, and we're trying to codify this industry that has yet to be codified, right? So imagine trying to index a bunch of information and data that's like never been indexed. You got to figure out like, what are the fields that you need? What are the columns? What are the patterns, right? So we're still very much in an early phase and trying to figure out like, where are the cow paths, right? And so I think what's really interesting for me as I've kind of been climbing through my career is, there's kind of two big buckets of problems. Actually, I would say maybe three. And there's the little Venn diagram of overlapping problem buckets, so one problem bucket being, the product and the features and your customers, right? So, trying to deliver value for your customers timely, trying to iterate, find product market fit, et cetera, right? So stay ahead of the competition, like all of the business logic and domain logic that's very specific to the thing that you're building, right? So if I'm working on software that, enables hair salons, right? So there's a lot of domain knowledge I now know about how hair salons operate. They need this, they need that, right? Like, just look at your database schema, like, right? There's your domain knowledge, right? And so you don't walk into a new job with that domain knowledge. And so that's something that you learn company to company, industry to industry. And if you're staying within the same industry, right? If you're working for like one insurance marketplace and you're moving from Progressive to Geico, there's going to be a lot of overlap between those two domains. So it'll be a little less overhead for you as you're switching jobs. But, for folks, more often than not, they're just switching complete industries, so they're working on software as a service for, B2B like a B2B SaaS company. And then they're, working on e-commerce marketplace. And right. So each of these kind of domains are their own, like there's their own learning curve. And, different engineers, I would say not all engineers invest heavily in domain knowledge. And given the kind of turnover that you see in our industry, in terms of, folks are staying at a job a year, 2 years, 3 years, because the market's really hot. Folks are job hopping and, getting that salary bump while they do that, you find that like at software companies, folks who've been there for more than 2.5 years just are like these domain experts, and they kind of, for better or worse, they become bottlenecks. So that's a bad thing. But I would say, so there's kind of mastering the domain and understanding how you can use software to improve the domain itself, right? So how can I use software to actually improve this process, right? So if this process was 3 steps, how do I now take all the knowledge that I know and make it 2 steps, make it 1 step, right? So there's kind of that continual improvement that, folks who really invest in domain knowledge get to take advantage of.
Well, so I'm thinking about people who want to climb the engineering ladder and go from early into career to mid-level Joe and Jane engineer up to senior principal, staff, et cetera, and become a CTO or VP at some point. As old man who shakes fist at cloud, I sometimes feel to myself that how can you make organizational change in a year? Yeah, maybe you learned React this year, but what did you get out of that year's experience? And then if your resume is 20 years with 20 jobs, you probably got a lot of pay bumps. Good on you for taking that money and being valued. How do you find that balance between I floated, I learned a lot of tech, but I never learned anything deeply from a domain knowledge perspective? And does that affect one's promotion velocity? Because I could always just quit and become a senior engineer at the next company because they'll give me a promo. So what's the difference between a senior or principal that goes bounce between companies versus one that stays somewhere 5 or 10 years?
And works that way up. Yeah. I honestly, that's like it's the holy grail of, I think, career development for software engineers. But it's about staying somewhere long enough to be able to make change for really hard problems. When you're at a company for a year, you're okay, great. After a year, you're able to like really understand some of the core problems, but you're not in a position often to really make that organizational change. Or advocate for it. And so, you're kind of working on surface level problems, right? And I think the real problems that most software companies have are actually around how to maintain their legacy software and how to do lift and shifts. How do I migrate to the cloud if I'm not on the cloud? How do I, refactor parts of my application to use this new technology? How do I break up my monolith? Whatever it is, like there's some really deep problems that you don't get to see to fruition when you're constantly job hopping. And so, the real heroes for me are often the engineers that are able to maintain legacy systems and actually push the needle on them, right? So how do you actually improve? And for me, anything like for me, as long as your code is running in production, for me, I see that as legacy. Like it's shipped, it's on somebody else's computer. It's legacy, right? It's debt. You need to, maintain it and pay that, improve it, et cetera. And so, there's just a lot of complex problems that folks are not as exposed to these days, because I think there's just the market's really hot. People are working on surface level problems. And so what you have is this like high concentration of a few people at companies that become these pivotal, don't get hit by a bus people.
Right,
you know what I mean?
Right. High bus
And
factor people. And
right,
someone says
right.
the bus factor. Please don't have Amal hit by a bus because no one else knows that system like she does.
Right. And that's not good. I mean, and if you're an engineer or a manager, you really should be working on not doing the same thing next year. You should be working on trying to kind of almost work yourself out of a job, right? Like you should be trying to like not do repetitive work,
Yeah. I call it successor management. I'm actively looking for my successors.
Right. Yeah. And knowledge transfer and mentorship and, getting others up to speed is like a key part of being a good leader in any org, like regardless of whether you're an engineering leader or, business leader. And so you should constantly be, kind of a beacon of knowledge. And I think that's, and understand that you are one person and your humanity and physics and time and space and gravity like have put hard limits on what you can do as one person, right? Software is a force multiplier, but only to an extent, right? So what can you do to enable others to be able to collaborate with them and have them be advocates and work on the things that, like, how do you be an influencer so that you get them to make change happen on your behalf? And so you can go focus on something else now, And so really it's about learning how to lift all tides, or what's not lift all, but like, how do you lift all boats, right?
A rising tide lifts all boats. If you are the tide, then you have a lot of power.
Right. So you want to try to be that tide that's like lifting everybody.
Mm-hmm. How do we do that though when people are bouncing around? See, the thing is, I don't want to disrespect people who stay 20 years at a company, and I don't want to disrespect people who leave a company after a year. But you want people to be paid what they're worth, to feel that they are worth, feel that they are making organizational change, feel that they are doing good work. You don't want someone to say, "Man, I stayed at this company 3 years too long and I hate it."
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think that the thing that you've repeated multiple times that really resonates with me is this idea of surface level work. I mean, maybe you could talk a little bit about the difference between surface level work, good work, but surface level, versus deep work, significant organizational change.
Yeah. So I'll use some UI code, as an example, like rearranging layouts or adding new buttons or hooking into new endpoints is kind of like surface level work. But I would say, re-architecting a system to be more efficient, working on deep performance issues, optimizing other people's workflows, improving, your customers, like that, like turnaround time for your customers, I'd say those are the types of big impact projects that, you don't get to work on as often when you haven't developed enough domain expertise. But also, it's not even just about domain expertise. It's about being able to, like, just the nature of software projects. Like, they take time. They take time to. Half my job, like more than half my job, it's like the design process, the architecture process, getting people aligned, the actual, figuring out, doing design discovery, iterating on that a few times, right? The actual execution piece is like the smallest, right? Because by the time you get to the execution, you kind of should know exactly what you want to do and you just do it, right? But it's all the other work, and that stuff takes time. And the bigger your org, the more you can't have 2 pizzas to feed your team. Like, the slower things move, unfortunately. So, things just take time.
Yeah, I was going to say, did you know when you were moving up the engineering ladder and becoming an engineering leader that there was a lot less slapping of the keyboard than you would have expected? It's really just cat herding.
That's like literally my job is like herding cats, aligning people, pointing out problems, codifying, iterating, like swaying hearts and minds is a big thing for me, these days,
That's not the for loop part that they taught me in school. I thought I was just going to be writing for loops for 20 years.
I know. Well, I mean, so that's what I learned. So actually I did a pendulum swing. I was an engineering manager for a short little while, and then I decided I want to go back to an IC role. After that, I don't even know, maybe I wasn't ready. It was just a super intense job at an intense company, NPM, you might know it. Mm-hmm. You may have heard of it. So, but what I realized is that basically the more junior you are, the more you're going to be spending time on execution, because you're more or less being told what to do. And the higher you climb, the more you have to figure out what to do, the more you're working with ambiguous product requirements. And now I'm involved in like helping figure out what the hell we're building, right? Like, it's a different question. And so you're often kind of like ahead of teams, figuring out what we're doing and then circling back and saying, okay, troops, this is the plan, right? Mm-hmm. But that whole time where you're kind of ahead of your team, like there's just it's meetings, it's lucid charts, lucid charts. It's just there's just so much that goes into kind of the planning process. Fortunately and unfortunately, but the communication tax is real. It's very real in big organizations, and and that's not for everybody. There's lots of like great software companies, teams that put out great products. This company is a little controversial these days, but I do believe they have generally a good culture in their engineering organization. But Basecamp, they've always remained a pretty small org, and they've managed to churn out great products that have changed many people's lives, for the better. But they're like under 30 people or something like that. And so so you can be small and mighty, but we don't all have the luxury of staying small and mighty.
Well, one of my most favorite small and mighty analogies is the idea of the generalist being a Swiss Army knife. I have literally 2 Swiss Army knives sitting on my desk here that remind me to be funny little knives that aren't good at everything. And when we were prepping this podcast, you said something very clever that I want to make a t-shirt of, which is that good engineers know not to get distracted with the things that they don't know. How do you know when to let go? How do you know when to be a generalist and when to go deep on a technology?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, so, again, back to the theme of like the more I climb in my career, the longer I've been writing software or contributing to the whole process, the more I identify as a generalist. Like the less I identify with specific tools, libraries, languages. For me, it's just about problems. And, to kind of circle back to my earlier point, I'm not writing as much software at work as I would like to be these days. I'm still writing software for sure. And I'm really involved with the code review process and whatever else. But it's not like hours every day, right? But I'm still solving problems at a high level. And that's what changes when you're kind of moving up is you're now building software, but it's through other people. And so you're kind of a little puppet master. I hate to use that analogy, but I can't think of a better one, but you're building software through people. And so you're still solving problems just at a higher level, if that makes sense,
Yeah.
And so they're just build bigger blocks now, as opposed to like actual pieces of like code on your screen. It's like now this code that somebody's going to write is going to be because, I helped figure out how to solve that problem upstream, right? So they're like the execution of what I'm building. And so that the whole process of kind of climbing up the ladder and working at different companies, you realize like software is like a total snowflake. Every single company is a snowflake because of its stack, because of its legacy code, and like all of the, weird cruft around having like 4 different languages and like this weird bash script that you have to run every time you want to work locally. And like
there's
always cruft that's so unique. And you realize that your biggest skill is like how to learn fast, how to learn what you know so that you can leverage it the next time you have to learn something similar, right? And to give you an example, like the first time you're learning how to write software, you don't know what a variable is, you don't know what a for loop is. But once you have your first language, I've learned Python, I know how to write a for loop or know how to instantiate a variable in Python. Now I'm learning JavaScript for the first time. And you know what? I don't need to understand what is a variable, what is a loop. Now I'm just saying, oh, okay, this is how you do this in JavaScript, right? So it's a map in your brain as opposed to having to learn the whole new concept, right? So now you take that type of learning and mapping and you scale that up exponentially, right? Every job, every project, every team, and so you see patterns, and you see that it's not about the tool, it's not about the pattern or the framework, or it's about what's the problem you're trying to solve. How do you solve it in the best way that's going to deliver value for your customers in the fastest amount of time, and it's going to be the cheapest to maintain over X number of years, right? And interestingly, we were having a conversation on Twitter today. The conversation thread is a little bit of a dumpster fire, if I'm allowed to say that, but like it just exploded into just Opinionville. But an interesting conversation, like an interesting point that was brought up is that we should expect change. We shouldn't try to write software and have it just be this like Buddha that the static Buddha that's immortalized on some wall. You write software and you should expect it to change. And so when you're writing your software, you should be optimizing it to be easy to change, right? So you write software that's going to be easy to change and maintain and scale over time, you shouldn't write software expecting this is never going to change, right? And so I think like that's an outlook and a mentality that's like kind of missing in our industry. Like it's just something that's just not there, as much. And so but I think it's that coupled with understanding it's not about the tool. It's about what is the right tool for the job that you're trying to do. What is the right tool for the problem that you're trying to solve? And I think it's that type of thinking, that really, and at the end of the day, also what's going to create the best user experiences, because that's all that matters in the end. You spend like 4 hours writing this complex type definition file or fighting TypeScript bugs, and that's 4 hours you're not writing code that actually runs in the browser when your user runs the code. Like, you know what I'm saying? And so you have to really be user and customer centric at the core. If you use accessible, delightful user experiences, if that's your North Star, like when you're making decisions, like you're always going to make the right decision, you know?
I would add on to that, if I may, that's on the customer focused, user focused, human side of things. On the compute side of things, there are engineering fundamentals that are non-respective of their languages. Compute is a thing. Memory is a thing. Memory has speed. I/O has things. Networks have latency. I feel like even though I'm a .NET person, if I went to work on Rust somewhere or Go or JavaScript, I've got the base of the pyramid. Do you think that that's a fundamental part of being a good generalist as well? The technology pyramid?
Absolutely. It's having a set of kind of go-to technologies that, fit different parts of the stack, and understanding where things fit in and when it's appropriate to use what is another, kind of skill as well, just to kind of echo what you said. But ultimately, like, it's just not about the tool, and it's not about the language, and it's not about the framework. It's just not. It's ultimately everything is just a means to an end, And the more you kind of think about things with that lens, the more you can kind of divorce yourself from all of the like volatility and all of the emotions around, I'm team Angular versus team React versus, it's at the end of the day, everything compiles down to bytecode, and they're just different abstractions that solve, that solve the same problem and just with different syntax. So
yeah. And as we get towards the end of our show here, that is what is so exciting about the stuff that y'all are doing at Indigo, is that there's this stack and you're layering on top of that stack. And the stack is, I get my apples and a farmer gets paid and they don't have any waste. And that stack gets deeper and deeper and deeper. But hopefully if you do it right, it just works and everyone has a great experience, and we don't think about the depth and the complexity of that stack.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But to kind of just finish the point, I'm gonna pop back the stack, or I don't know, whatever, pop or push, whatever it is.
Everything off.
So those kind of 3 problem buckets, right? So one is domain, like mastering your domain. The other is mastering the company, right? So the company itself, like the teams and the services and who does what and who's your expert for this thing, and kind of navigating that landscape and really understanding how to best leverage your organizational structure to help drive like forward the change that you're trying to make. Like that's really key, because once you're able to really understand how to work collaboratively across immediate team boundaries, right? So this isn't like your immediate team, but like, how do I collaborate with this other team to work on this complex integration project, or how do I find the experts in the company that can help advise me on this architecture thing that I'm trying to push, right? So you're really understanding that is its own kind of beauty, and mastering that. And the really nice thing is, when you're able to kind of build cool stuff with people and you get stuff done, like you're building this network of people that you've been able to collaborate with effectively, whether you want to hire them in the future at another company, or whether you want to, keep working with them, or, like that stuff, like it's like, these are the days of our lives, right? Like this is what we spend time doing. And I think, we should take pride in being able to like make good things happen.
That is a superpower that I don't think gets talked enough about, is that I know a lot of the work that I'm trying to do, work that you're trying to do with your influence to keep people from quitting tech, to understand the power that we have. There's not just engineering leaders and people who ship things, but if you're in tech for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, the power that you have to simply have worked on lots of projects and the network that you'll build of cool people enables you to be more successful. But if we push you out of tech in the first year or two, you'll never get a chance to build that up. There's that old term, the old boys network, and people feel like they can't succeed because of the old boys network. I want them to become part of the old people's network and join us and have that power. Like, you know lots of people. I know lots of people. You and I can sit down with any person in tech who's been in 5-10 years, and we're going to, you worked with so-and-so. It's such a great feeling. And I want more people in tech to feel that.
Yeah, I mean, there's just a ton of gatekeeping at different levels in tech. It's really unfortunate whether people are discriminated against because of their gender or their race or what, or their age. Even ageism is a huge thing. People aging out of tech. It's really unfortunate because I hear things like there's, for example, to give you one example of gatekeeping that's very subtle, right? Because it can seem as if though somebody's trying to demand excellence. But really, it's kind of BS. So, for example, somebody saying, "Oh, you need to understand how all of these layers in the software stack work before you can use a specific tool or a library." You don't need to understand how every single method in jQuery works to use jQuery. You need to learn how to use the parts of jQuery that you need to get your job done, and the goal is just to not be distracted by what you don't know. And then as you get more experience, you start to like lean on. You become comfortable with being uncomfortable. Like, the whole process of writing software and maintaining software or thinking about new architectures, it's very uncomfortable. We're always in this weird uncanny valley where we're working with new stuff and old stuff and things that we don't know and things are unpredictable, and so being uncomfortable and not knowing everything is par for the course. There's no singular person, not Tim Berners-Lee, not Linus Torvald, no one, not Bill Gates, not one person that knows every single thing about software engineering and the web. Like, literally no one. Like, we are all domain experts in our very small, narrow fields. And even that, people often have T-shapes, where they have a breadth of things that they know about and just one or two, usually just like one area of expertise, And so you have to leverage your network and be comfortable with being uncomfortable. It's okay. All part of the process. Trust me, you will get used to it. And you can still be successful and productive and drive wins and create cool apps and solve important problems without being a world-class software engineer. So don't wait to be excellent. Just do it. It's fine. It's fine to fail. It's fine to make bugs. It's fine to break production. As long as you're learning, it's all good.
I really need you to start a t-shirt company right now because you're dropping, don't wait to be excellent. You're dropping all of the little nuggets that I appreciate so much.
Seriously.
I appreciate you hanging out with me today and helping us understand how to climb the engineering ladder.
Yeah, no, it's been fun. And we're not going to have time to get into it, but the last bucket is the stack, So just you're going to have to spend a little time investing and learning the parts of the stack that you are most interested in. And it sucks, sometimes you're having to learn a whole new stack or whatever, but take the time, because I promise you the next time you have to do something similar, it'll go faster. And so each time you have to learn something new, it'll go faster and it'll go faster. And so when you meet these programmers that are just able to pick up stuff like that, it's not because they're genius. It's just because they've had 60 other iterations where they've had to do the same thing, Yes. So just it's okay for things to take time and for things to be slow, or your first few times or your first 20 times or 100 times. It's fine. It's as long as you're learning and growing, that's all that matters. So
yeah, we need to create places for people to fail fast and often, and that's where the improvement happens. The developer's inner loop needs to be as short as possible. And if we make a culture and technology systems that allow them to fail quickly without fear, then they will be better, faster.
Yeah. And that's why I always advise junior developers, for better or worse, I always tell them, your first company, let it be a big company. Let it be somewhere where you're not in the critical path, where you're given the room to flail a little bit, that's really important to your growth when you're just starting out, or when you're, 2 years and under. You need some room to flail. You need some room to digest. You're not going to be as fast as you want to be. You're not going to be as good as you want to be. Just stick with it, and also surround yourself with people that are smarter than you. I always surround myself with people that are smarter than me. Like everyone at Indigo is smarter than me. We have so many incredible smart like people, and they're just super humble. And I love working with people that are smarter than me, because that's just how, like, they just push me to grow and be excellent. So
that's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Amal Hussein, for chatting with me today, Principal Software Engineer at Indigo. This has been another episode of Hansel Minutes, and we'll see you again next week.